talking about my personal experience of being the weird, quiet kid in high school and how it's affected me throughout my life, especially now going into my early 20s. I'm 21 right now. I want to say, like, I still am a quiet person, and I think I'll forever be a quiet person, but I think when I was younger, my quietness stemmed a lot more from social anxiety, and I just had no idea how to cope with that. I've gotten to a point now where I'm comfortable and I'm okay with being a quiet person, but when I was younger, I definitely carried a lot of internalized shame, and that just made me like despise myself, and it was just really confusing to deal with. I just want to disclaim, I've never formally been diagnosed with social anxiety, but when I was younger, it was undeniably there, and yeah, those are my credentials of being a weird, quiet person. This video is just me sharing my experience. It's not going to be something like super informative or like a how-to, how I cured my social anxiety. It's nothing like that. It's literally just my experience, and I'm also going to throw in some tips for how I've dealt with it and how I'm healing now. I'm sort of gonna go over the timeline in my life from being like literally like a 7-year-old kid to being 21, because that's sort of the ages of when it first developed, and it's just sort of healing in a way for me to share this experience with you guys, because I know a lot of people out there can relate to me. So one question I've always tried to figure out and ask myself is, when exactly did my social anxiety start? Because actually, I started out as a pretty extroverted kid. I had a lot of friends, and not to get too crazy, but I would have considered myself someone who was like popular. You know what I mean? Like, I just had a lot of friends, and I was a very likable little kid. And then 4th grade is when things started to change. I'm not gonna say this is like the first moment that I ever experienced like rejection or something really negative. It's just the moment that like stands out to me in my brain. It's like a core memory. It was 4th grade, and it was like middle of the school year. I believe the teacher had given us like an indoor recess day, so kids were basically just doing whatever they wanted, like reading and drawing, going off on their own. During that time, I was like sort of in a friend group. I had a best friend, and we would always hang out with each other. So whenever the teacher announced that it was indoor recess time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find my friends. And so I remember leaving my desk, going to find them, and they were sitting in this corner. It was sort of like, I guess, like a secret club corner that they had made it into. Like, they had put these, like, monkey barrel toys. If you remember those, they were like these little monkeys you could connect and, like, sort of hang anywhere. And they had hung, like, a line of them to sort of look like a chain. And I remember, like, the only way you were invited into this club was, like, by having permission, and then they would take the monkey chain and sort of like open it for you to come into, but if you weren't invited, then they would leave the monkey chain up. And so I remember going up to them and being like, hey guys, can I come inside the secret club? And I just remember like the way they looked at me when I asked that. I remember they literally like closed it off in front of me. They started laughing like in my face. You know when like people are like laughing at you and like you start laughing too because like you're so anxious? I remember doing that. And I just remember like the way like the smile faded off my face, because I realized that like, oh, like they're serious, like they don't want me to be a part of the club anymore. I remember walking back to my desk alone and just spending the rest of the day alone. You know, me and this group, we used to be pretty tight. We were all pretty good friends until this one girl came into the group, and she was like trying to be a leader, tell everyone what to do. And I think for some reason she just had it out for me. You know, I don't exactly remember like if I did something to her. I mean, I don't think I did, but who knows, maybe I like pushed her during recess or something, because I was pretty passionate about tag. Tag was a game that like I did not mess around with. Like I would get pretty physical with tag. So maybe that happened, but I don't know. I was just trying to make things up to find some type of reason for why nobody liked me anymore. But I think the reason was her. She was telling everyone not to let me hang out with them. She was telling everyone that I was like weird or something. That sort of set the tone for the rest of my school years, and that was the first time I ever felt like an outcast, and it felt like everyone in my life was behind this set of little monkey barrel chains and I was not allowed in. So 4th grade ends, and then 5th grade happens, And this year I actually moved to a new school just because my parents were moving and I was, really nervous as expected. That's a really sudden change for any child, is to move schools. And this is when I actually started to become the weird kid. I had magically, whatever. I magically had found another group of friends to be friends with. And the reason why we connected is because these friends were also kind of like social misfits. Like, you guys, we were the only ones watching anime back then. And I don't think you guys realize, like, anime was not cool back then. If you liked anime, people did not like you. I would wear my sister's Attack on Titan cadet jacket to school because I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because I thought my sisters were the coolest thing ever. Honestly, like, it didn't bother me. I consciously knew that wearing that and liking anime and always being the quiet kid, and I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I was really obsessed with dragons in 5th grade. I loved the Aragon series, and so I always was carrying around that really thick Aragon book. So I was very aware of the fact that I was weird, and I actually kind of liked it because, I don't know, I've never really wanted to fit in after that.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in.
So 5th grade, I actually have really fond memories of being the weird kid. It wasn't until middle school, 6th grade, where it started to become more of a problem. My closest friend from 5th grade actually moved to a different middle school. So that was really hard for me because she was the one that, like, was friends with everyone else, and I had just felt like I lost, like, the main connection to everyone else. So I was basically starting over again. Middle school was the worst years of my life. And I know it sounds bizarre saying that, like, because how could a 12-year-old possibly be that sad? You'd be amazed at how sad I was when I was 12 years old. Like, I've never been more miserable in my life. The hardest thing about middle school for me was adjusting to the different class periods. For 5 years, we've been taught, oh, we only have one teacher, there's only one class. And all of a sudden, we have 8 different classes, and in each different class, there's different students. So it's like, for me, I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to make a friend in every class? I can barely even make one friend. So it was really difficult for me to adjust to that, and I don't think I ever really did, honestly. Yeah, I just remember being very frustrated at that. And so, yes, I was the weird kid. If you're a weird kid, I think there's still hope for you. You can find your other group of weird kids to hang out with. There was definitely always that kind of really nerdy group, and I always wanted to be a part of it, but turns out if you're the weird, quiet kid, then it's like you can't even be a part of the weird kid group. So this is when my social anxiety kind of peaked. You've ever experienced any anxiety symptoms, you would know that anxiety makes your body do the weirdest things ever. Things you didn't even know your body could do. I remember for a few years I had this thing where whenever I got socially anxious, like if I was next to someone, it would just trigger this reaction in my throat. I would start gulping, like, excessively. I was gulping so frequently and so loud that, like, my throat would hurt. It was, like, swollen. And I would also get really anxious about the fact that people could hear me gulping. And so because of that, the gulping would get worse. And it was just such a weird, like, thing. Like, my mind could not control it. It was so hard to get it under control. It took years for it to go away. Another weird thing I did was I would wake up at 3 a.m. every school week. And that's just, like, not a normal thing to do because school typically starts at like 8 a.m. So you would have to wake up like 7:30. And I would wake up at 3 a.m. And I just wasn't getting sleep. I was just so anxious that I felt that I needed alone time before school. I just needed my own time to, like, mentally prepare because school was just so anxious that I needed to be conscious away from school, you know what I mean? That was just, like, a really weird thing that I would do. Another not really weird thing, because it's pretty common, is I have a pretty bad habit of biting my nails and picking my cuticles, and till this day I still do, but back in my school years, it was really, really bad. I mean, like, my fingers were disgusting. It got so bad that I actually chipped my tooth in the front of my teeth. Yeah, I cracked a tooth biting my nail one day. I remember one time green pus came out of my finger, and my finger was most likely very much infected. And by the way, that's like extremely dangerous. I have learned picking your cuticles is extremely dangerous because you can get an infection and that can cause you to lose a finger. So this is just like a cautionary tale to anyone who bites their nails and their cuticles. Just be very careful and, you know, don't ever get to the point where you're like drawing blood. But yeah, so that's just like another anxiety thing. If you guys have any weird quirks that your body does when you get anxious, I'd like to hear them, honestly, because I think it's interesting and it just makes me feel less alone. And I was just a very cynical and bitter kid. Maybe it's because I had 3 older sisters, so I always had like more mature people to look up to. But I just remember I often felt very annoyed with people my own age. I remember one time in 6th grade, it was during science class, and the teacher had given us an assignment, a group project to work on. My group in particular was very much not doing their work, and they were goofing off and being very loud and obnoxious. And I remember they were messing around and doing this like thing where they would pretend they have OCD and they would try to straighten everything up and like be like, oh my god, I'm so OCD and I have to make sure my pencils are all straight, blah blah blah. And even as a kid, I remember being so annoyed because I was like, that's not what OCD is. Like, how do these people not know that OCD is not just like disorder where you're like, have to make everything perfect? Like, I was so annoyed. I remember being like irrationally like annoyed with them, and I felt like I was like suffocating being around them. Like, their voices were just like annoying me so much. This was a common theme throughout my life, was feeling so out of place with people my own age. I felt so much resentment towards my peers, but I also had a deep, deep hatred for myself for feeling that resentment. I could not for the life of me understand why all these kids around me are having like the most fun ever, like everyone's in their group of friends and I'm just here like observing life and not really living. Like, I felt like I was always just like in a movie observing rather than actually being in it. Middle school was a very lonely time for me. I always being the kid who never had a partner. Oh my god, I dreaded the days where we had to do partner work and the teacher would be like, okay, choose your partners. And I was always the last kid alone. Nobody wanted to be my partner. And I remember like going up to the teacher and being like, I don't have a partner. Just things like that, like, were really hard for me to cope with. My parents were also going through a divorce during this time. I never really took that like too seriously because, to be frank, like my parents, it was kind of like a good thing that my parents did get divorced, so it wasn't like it was like terrible, but it certainly didn't help that transitionary time in my life. Part of being a teenager is being very angsty and being very like, oh, my life sucks, I hate my life. I feel like I just took that on too much. Like, I really forced myself to be like that. You know, deep down, everyone just wants love. Everyone just wants a shred of attention. Everyone just wants to feel seen and be understood. And I know that's what I craved the most, but I would rather like eat a bug than actually admit that to anyone. You know, I just wanted to be a kid. And believe me, there was opportunities for me to do that. And, you know, it wasn't all like doom and gloom. There was like, you know, little glimpses of sunshine in the middle of middle school. But, you know, I just remember looking back at those days, the main theme of it was sadness. It's not like I never had friends. I just felt I never had those genuine friendships, you know? I think the most impactful moment during middle school with that experience of friendships is this time I met this girl in orchestra, and she was one of the popular kids, and middle school was like pretty insane with the division between the normal kids and the popular kids. Like, the popular kids were like, everyone knew about them. And so I almost felt honored that this popular girl was talking to me. I was a little confused. I was like, why is she talking to me out of everyone else? But I just kind of let it happen because it felt good to have that attention. I kind of knew something deep down was off about it because it was like she wanted to be my friend so bad. She talked to me in a very, like, the way you would talk to a dog, like, oh my gosh, like, you're so cute, oh my gosh, you don't talk, oh my gosh, you're so quiet, like that. Any person who's quiet has dealt with this before in their life. People very much belittle you and treat you like you're a little pet when you're quiet. I remember she would give me very uncomfortable hugs. Like, she would touch me all the time and just sort of like treat me in a very demeaning way. And I always felt that, but I could never like separate myself from it. I remember one time she invited me to sit at her lunch table, and that was like a serious thing. That was like an invitation to eat with the kings and queens. So of course I took it, and I was also just super curious to see like what they talk about at lunch. So I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna do it, even, you know, despite how uncomfortable it's gonna be. I just want to see. And I did see. And of course, like, nobody really talked to me when I sat there. Like, even though I was like making eye contact with them all, they were just kind of like ignoring me. I think the most bizarre thing was their topics of conversation, which just always revolved around someone else. It was always someone else that wasn't at the table. They were always talking about someone else, and not in a positive way either. It was very, very scary, because I realized that like, oh, like if I continue to sit here, there's gonna be a day where they're talking about me when I'm not there. So I just sat there that one day and never again. I actually made this mistake again later on in high school, but I'll get to that once I get to the high school portion. The most genuine friendship I thought I had, like I had invited her to my house one day and she did not show up. And I just remember being very like, oh my god, I'm like being rejected again. This is the monkey chain all over again. I'm not being invited into the monkey chain. And one thing about me is I'm very intense about friendships, you know, showing that you care about your friends and showing up for each other. And, you know, maybe I'm a little unforgiving in the way that if someone starts to show those patterns of not being a good friend, is I tend to distance myself very, very, very quickly. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes in friendships and nobody's perfect, but I just felt that this person didn't value our friendship as much as I thought they did, or as much as I did. Honestly, I did have sort of a toxic view of friendship. I felt that if you were my friend, you had to like be 100% my friend, and you could never really have like any other better friends than me. Like I was a little possessive in that way, where I just wanted that true, you know, relationship, which is like totally unfair. Like people are allowed to have other friends. So that was something I was like really struggling with socially. And ironically, like wanting a close friend that bad, I feel like pushes people away. So that was probably what I was experiencing. So middle school was having those negative experiences with friendships, and then came high school. High school was not as bad as middle school. I think high school, I was sort of starting to realize that I was being a little bit dramatic. I was making things worse for myself than they actually were. When you're younger, you just have a very one-dimensional view of the problem. And so you think, this is the end of the world, basically, and like, no, nothing else is ever gonna make me happy again. And it takes growing up to learn that that's definitely not the case, and that there's ways to cope with it. Freshman year, I actually really enjoyed. I remember I had a friend group that was pretty huge, and it's not like we were ever like a popular group. We were just kind of like normal kids put together. However, there was a lot of drama between that group. I was never in it. I never really understood what was going on. I was just kind of like watching from the sidelines. Because of that, I was also never really like close to any of the friends in the group. Like I always just felt that I was just there to be kind of like a filler friend, and kind of like if I actually went one-on-one with these people, it'd be really awkward. Just never like got to know these people in a way that wasn't surface level. It was just sort of like me being their friend to be friends, you know? Eventually that friend group all kind of faded. And then sophomore year happened. In the middle of the year is when COVID started. I remember like distinctively like when COVID happened, it was spring break. Everyone was so happy to have another week off of school. Like it was like the best week in the world. But then another week happened, and then another week we're not back in school, and then it's months. So yeah, COVID was the end basically of my sophomore year. Everything was online. And I gotta admit, I was low-key like very, very happy to not go back to school and to not have to face people again, and to get to be in the comfort of my bedroom and do school. Like I was actually just like so happy that that happened. Then COVID lasted another year, so I completely missed my junior year in person. Those 2 years of COVID and not physically going to high school really just solidified the isolation going on with me, and made it to where I just could never really heal from it. I was just constantly alone. And so was everyone else. You know, everyone was dealing with quarantining. No one was actually interacting unless you were not quarantining. But I was quarantining. Like I never really left my room, and it kind of got to the point where like I wouldn't even go outside to get fresh air. I do want to say though, I did have a part-time job during high school, and I still worked during COVID. So I think my job honestly really saved me. I, you know, had brief social interactions with customers and stuff. That sort of kept me from going a little insane. But still, little did I know, although I was enjoying the alone aspect, I was actually sort of becoming depressed, was like rotting in bed doing schoolwork, and it was just an unhealthy amount of aloneness. I remember my mom had to beg me to leave my room just to go on a walk, and I remember I was just crying so hard in bed. I don't even know why I was crying. I just did not want to leave my room, and my mom literally had to drag me out to go get some fresh air. I just was so comfortable in my solitude that I was getting to a point where I was like losing myself in it. Anyways, after COVID happened, there was senior year. And I do want to say though, I have a huge unfair advantage in life of having my sisters. My sisters are literally my best friends. They're my only friends, honestly, right now in life. And they're just like, you know, my built-in best friends since day one. So, you know, I can't even imagine what being an only child would be like. Are you guys okay? Like, honestly, I cannot imagine not having my sisters. But yeah, senior year starts, and I had lost all concept of friendship. It was all out of the window. Very first few weeks of school, I actually ate lunch alone in the bathroom. And for me, that was probably like the lowest of the low. And I really did not like being in that situation, but I felt I would rather eat lunch in the poopy bathroom than be in a cafeteria at a lunch table alone. The cafeteria for a quiet kid is literally the bane of our existence. Like, it's literally the worst place. It's so overstimulating. I just never wanted to be in the cafeteria ever. Little did I know, I did not have to eat lunch in the bathroom. There were so many other options. And so if you're in high school watching this, or whatever grade, there's so many other options if you don't feel comfortable eating in the cafeteria. You can go to the library. I actually made friends with the librarians, and we were on a basis where they would let me go to the library and eat my lunch there every day as long as I was respectful. And it was awesome. It was the greatest advantage ever. You could also eat lunch with your teacher, and this is only if you're close with your teacher, close enough to ask them. My art teacher, we were pretty close, and he was comfortable with me going into his classroom. I would hide in the art closet and just eat my lunch, and it was awesome. Another option, which I never tried, is honestly if you're to a point where you're gonna eat lunch in the bathroom, go to the counselor first, okay? I know going to the counselors is super intimidating, but I feel they're there to help you, truly. If you express how uncomfortable the cafeteria makes you, I am sure they'll find some way to accommodate to you. And that's if they're good counselors, but I would like to have hope in my heart that that's what they would do if they saw a kid in need of comfort. Do not be afraid to talk to people for help. I wish I had done that in high school instead of always feeling like I had to fend for myself and I was always so alone and everything. The older teachers, they truly understand because they've been in your position before and they've seen other kids go through the same thing. So they will understand if you reach out to them. Okay, remember how I said I also had another experience of interacting with popular kids? Well, yeah, that was my senior year. And this was my forensics class. This wasn't even too long ago. This was literally 3 years ago. It was the last period of the day. I had found myself sitting at the same table as the popular kids. There wasn't any assigned seating, so anyone could sit wherever they want, and somehow I ended up with the popular kids. And again, I hate saying popular kids, but what I mean by that is they're more socially aware, they're better at communicating, and that makes them more, attractive in a way. Everyone wants to associate with them. Anyways, I somehow found myself sitting with them. It was nice to sit with them. I'm not saying all popular kids are secretly evil. It felt good to be included in that group. However, I still felt like I was on the outside. It still felt like they knew I was a quiet person. Eventually, I had put two and two together and I realized these kids were sort of taking advantage of me. That's because every single day, without fail, they were always asking me for something. They were always asking for my assignments to copy off of them. They were always asking for my homework because they knew that I always did them because I was a good kid. Not like they were ever mean to me, but I just always thought that they were gonna be mean to me if I didn't give them my homework and my assignments, so I always gave it to them, even though deep down I knew I was this feels wrong and I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. And it just got to a point where it felt like these people were not my friends at all and they were just keeping me around so they could pass the class. So one day I just sort of had it out and I didn't say anything to them. I just sat at a different table, which was really weird because it was in the middle of the year. I sat at a different table alone. And I remember one of the girls came up to me and she was like, hey, why are you sitting here? What happened? And I was like, oh, I just kind of needed a change for the year. And it was super awkward. And she was like, oh, okay. And that was it. That was the end of my relationships with them. If you have ever found yourself in that position of someone needing your homework, needing your assignment, whatever, Like, it's okay. I feel like it's okay if like people sometimes ask for it. Like, I've been there. I think I've asked people for homework sometimes too. But if someone's asking for it every single day, it's like, buddy, like, you're lame. You're so lame for that. And I don't care how lame you think I am for not giving you my homework. I think you're lamer for leeching off of other people's work, for being so incompetent that you can't even do your own homework that's not even that hard because you're in a regular class. And my sister was actually in the same exact situation as me. My sister was also a pretty quiet, weird kid. And these kids were asking her for homework. She gave it to them. You know when like you do that and then you're like, okay, but you can copy it, but just don't copy it word from word. And of course, this girl copied it word for word. So my sister actually got in huge trouble with the teacher because she found out that the student copied, and it was like this huge plagiarism thing, and my sister was on the verge of losing her scholarship. Like, it was serious. So, like, I'm just saying this as a cautionary tale. Like, if you ever find yourself in that situation, you're still in high school, you're still in college or whatever, just be so careful. Like, I don't care like how lame it may seem to not want to give your homework out to others. I think it's lamer if you're the one that's always begging for it. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. At this point, I just had realized I'd rather not sacrifice the integrity of myself to hang out with a group of people who were, you know, they were cool and funny, but I would just rather not associate myself with those type of people. So senior year, the end of it was sort of me accepting that, okay, maybe this is just who I am, you know? I've lived my whole entire life like this. I don't think one day I'm just randomly gonna change and turn into a super confident extrovert. Like, I'm just a quiet person. And even when I was in high school, I remember being very conscious of the fact that there's probably gonna come a day where I regret being this way, where I regret not taking those chances, taking those opportunities to make friends, and regret, you know, not just like letting myself let go. And, you know, 3 years later, I do sort of regret it, but I think like I still wouldn't have enjoyed making a lot of friends. I think I'd rather have no one than a bunch of lame friends. I'd rather have one friend than no friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather have myself than people who aren't going to be truly there for me. And I'm not saying that like you shouldn't make friends, you shouldn't try talking. I'm just saying not to like hold it against yourself too much. I think if you're still in high school, middle school, watching this, you can try to make friends, and you cannot like hold yourself to this impossible standard of being perfect. Everyone's awkward. Oh my god, that's what I've learned about life now, is that everyone feels a little awkward. Everyone gets in their head a little too much. Everyone feels different. Everyone feels like an outcast. Okay, maybe I'm generalizing too much, but from the people I've met, everyone is anxious. Everyone is sort of like, oh my gosh, should I say this? Should I say that? So just give yourself grace, you know, because most of the time, like, the people around you are also like that, you know? So if you feel like you can't change because you've always been the quiet person, you feel like it's the middle of the year, you know, I can't possibly just start talking now. It's gonna feel like that, but like, really, it's not. There's nothing stopping you from that. And I wish I had realized that, and I wish I had made more of an effort to get to know people, because I was always like wanting to, like, I remember people would have conversations and in my head, I would be talking back to them, but I never let myself vocalize it because I was just always overthinking too much over, is this the right thing to say? They're gonna think I'm weird for like joining in another conversation. But that's how you make friends. Like, making friends is not supposed to be this like super easy thing. It's gonna feel awkward. You're gonna feel embarrassed. That's the scary part, is putting yourself out there and making that leap of faith, you know? I thought that because I was quiet that I had to be the quiet kid. I had to force myself into this role. I could never change. This is who I am. I tried to like tell myself that, oh, like, I'm just like the cool, mysterious, quiet kid that's different. And I sit in the back of the class and I'm just cool and mysterious. But the truth is, nobody thought that. Nobody thought that, because guess what? Nobody even knew I was there because I never talked at all. I remember it was the end of the year. I like said bye to this girl and she said, oh my God, I didn't even know you were in my class. And I was like, oh, oh, that's cool. You didn't even know I was there. And that's because I never talked at all. You know, if you never talk, people are just not even gonna know you're there. And so yeah, high school ends and here I am now, 21, and I still don't really have any solid friendships. I mean, like, I have acquaintances, I have really great online friends, But other than like my sisters and my boyfriend, there's no one I really completely like rely on them. They're not like in my life enough for me to understand or know them in a way, in a personal way. My circumstances are sort of unique. I'm not in school right now and I don't have a job yet. I'm applying to jobs, guys, okay? I promise. But right now, I don't have a job right now. And so I'm just in my room all day, and it's like, how can I make friends if I'm never leaving my room? I'm kind of stuck right now, honestly, because it takes a lot to get me to want to leave my room. I literally have to be lured out like a cat. I'm like one of those like little like shy cats in the streets, and you're like, psst, 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 come here, come here, psst, 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 psst. And then once you get the cat close to you, if you make any sudden movement, the cat's gonna run away really freaking fast. And that's what happens to me. It's like if I feel a little uncomfortable by a situation, I'm just like, I want to go back to my room right now. Some people may say that that's very sad and unfortunate, and you know what, I agree. But I do want to say, like, I've experienced enough of social gatherings. I've been in situations where, you know, there's lots of people, and those are just not, it's just not my thing, you know? It's not my cup of tea. I'm a very particular person, and I'd much rather have one-on-one time with someone instead of being with a lot of people. That's just like too much for me. I do admit that I still struggle with that instinct of needing to protect myself and putting up that guard when I meet people. I feel like I'm a little too reluctant to let them know who I am as a person, and I only show them like a curated version of myself. My view of friendship is still very much like intense, and I feel like I have to completely know someone to get them to be my true friend, which is so contradicting because I never let it get to that point. I always kind of like self-sabotage, and I'm like, no, I don't want to hang out anymore, or I just sort of slowly distance myself away from them. So it's like, how can I make true friends if I'm always pulling away? And I'm so annoyingly picky with people that I feel like it's not fair at this point, because I feel like, and it's not in the way like, I don't care how you dress, I don't care what your style is, I don't care what you do. I do want to say, like, I do mesh better with creative people who are more artsy. It's not like a requirement to be friends with me, but I feel like people who are more on like the sensitive side, I definitely vibe with better. What I'm really nitpicky about is like what type of person you are. Are you a kind person or a nice person? Because there's a huge difference between the two. You know, are you the type of person to help a grandma walk across the street? Or are you the type of person to just ignore them and keep walking? Do you thank the bus driver? I'm not saying you have to be like a super kind, ultra nice person, because maybe that's the case, but maybe you're just people pleasing, so it can be kind of manipulative in a way. You know, I am someone who is guilty of people pleasing, so I completely understand that. But I'm just looking for someone who has true character, you know? You know, I don't want to find myself in situations where I'm stuck with a friend that gossips a lot. I understand like gossip every now and then because maybe you just truly want to stay informed on what someone is doing. You know, if someone's like a bad person, you want to know they're a bad person through word of mouth. But if someone is always gossiping and always making it the point of conversation, that to me is just so boring. You know, like, I don't want to know about what this person's doing. It's like so meaningless to me. I want to know more about you. I want to know what type of art you like. I want to know what your favorite movie is, what your favorite character is, you know, stuff like that. I have a very low tolerance for like surface level conversation. And that's hard because like, how can you, it's always going to be very surface level in the beginning. And I think for me, that's the hardest thing is like, it takes time to get to know me. It takes like 3 years for me to like finally break out of my shell. Being an adult is even harder because you're not going to see your friends every day like you used to in high school. People have jobs, people are going to school, people, you know, have other priorities, other relationships. And so that to me is like even harder because I'm like, how can I get to know this person if we're only going to see each other once a month, twice a month? You know, if it's been 6 months and I haven't seen you, and then we meet up one day at a cafe, we're just gonna be playing catch up the entire time. I understand that, like, if you want to maintain a connection with someone to meet up every 6 months and have that conversation, but for me, it's just like, I don't really value that, I guess. So yeah, I definitely acknowledge that I have this contradicting thing where like I want to make friends, but I'm also too closed off to ever make friends, and that can like make people feel rejected. And I totally understand that. Like, I know I sort of have this problem where like people ask me to hang out and I say yes, but then I get too anxious about actually meeting them that I sort of not ghost them. Oh, actually, okay, you know what? I have ghosted someone. Oh my God. Like, I feel so guilty about that. And I know that's like such a terrible thing to do, but like I'm just so reluctant because I've had such negative experiences in the past. So that's where I'm at right now in my 20s. I'm not nearly as anxious as I used to be. I don't start shaking when people talk to me. I can make eye contact way better. I don't gulp anymore. I don't bite my nails as much anymore. You know, I've healed a lot since then. I remember when I was younger, of course I was very quiet, and people would always describe me as being shy. And I hated being described as shy. It bothered me so much when people would describe me as shy because I just took that as them saying there was something wrong with me. And I was like, what do you mean I'm shy? I'm not shy. Meanwhile, I was literally like the shyest person on earth. Like I would start shaking if you even came near me. And it took until my 20s to realize that, oh my God, like I'm just a shy person. And that's not a bad thing. Being shy isn't a negative character trait to have. If anything, I think it's a positive thing to have because it just means you're protecting your energy. I think if I wasn't a shy person, I would be getting myself into a lot of situations where people were taking more advantage of me. Shy people are awesome. I love shy people. I actually get along better with shy people than anyone else because I feel like we understand each other, and ironically, I the more shy someone is, the more extroverted I become. I'm honestly like very loud with the people I'm comfortable with. I'm not shy with the people I'm comfortable with. My sisters have to tell me to shut up in public sometimes because I'm like super loud. So like, it's not like I'm like a quiet person all the time. Like with people I completely trust, I'm like an extrovert. It's just people always perceive me as shy because I'm not blabbing my mouth off the first time I meet them. I think for me, it's just having to kind of get over this fear of being seen. I remember in high school one time, it was the very first time I made my own friend by myself. Usually when I make friends, it's because it's a friend of a friend, but this time it was 100% by myself. I remember it was middle of the year, I forget what grade it was, and the teacher was doing roll call and everyone was saying here, and the kid across from me said here, and his voice cracked like really bad, and he was like, here! And I remember like, for some reason, I laughed at him so hard and I was like, oh my God, that voice crack. And I thought I said it in my head. As I was saying, yeah, so I had accidentally voiced out my inside thoughts without thinking. It's like literally like in the movies when a character says something out loud and they're like, did I just say that out loud? Like, that was literally me. I hadn't like intended to make fun of him out of like ill intent. It was just like one of those moments where you're like teasing a friend, but like we weren't friends. But after that, we became friends because he thought it was really funny that I said that. We just genuinely got along. It's not like he was like a lifelong friend after this. Like, it was a very short friendship, but what I'm saying is like that's the first friend I ever made, and it was only because I let myself let go of being the quiet person. Basically what I'm saying is sometimes you have to get rid of the filter that suppresses you from saying your genuine thoughts. I'm not saying to completely get rid of that filter, because sometimes our inside thoughts are better staying inside thoughts, but sometimes, you know, we have thoughts that are okay to say out loud. You don't always have to hold yourself back from that, because if you constantly are withholding yourself from the amazing funny person you are inside your head, you're hiding yourself away from people, and you're never going to establish any friendships like that. Speaking of like experiences and things that helped me with my anxiety, and a lot of you are not going to like this, I don't even like the sound of me saying this, but truly getting a job, a job, getting a job helped me a lot with my anxiety. Unfortunately, that was the case. So I was 15 when I first got my job. It was at a donut store. During the weekends, I would wake up at 4 a.m. and go sell donuts. And I remember the very first day, I was so nervous. I was shaking so hard with the first customer I had. I remember handing him his card back for paying, and I was like, my hand was shaking so bad and it was so embarrassing. But the longer that I kept interacting with customers, the longer I kept pushing through my anxiety, the more normal it became and the less anxiety it brought me. And I remember I got to a point where like I wasn't afraid to talk to people. I wasn't afraid to talk to customers. It was just like, at some point you realize that everyone is just living their lives and they're not really concerned about you as much as you think they are. And because I've had this experience for 5 years, I worked that customer service job. I worked there till I was 20. I'm so much less anxious now, especially going up to like waitresses, baristas, telling them the order that I want. I'm not anxious at all really to talk to people and to ask them for help because I was doing the same thing at my job, you know, and they're just working. Nobody is really out to get you as much as your social anxiety makes you think they are. But I do want to make a quick disclaimer, I guess, that there is a huge difference between having social anxiety and just being a shy person. Because one of those is like an actual mental disorder. Those are very hard to just control or to cure, you know? I feel like people have really huge misconceptions about social anxiety because they think it's just something that you can get over in a day, or like if you're afraid of like talking public speaking, they think you're just like a wussy, which is so annoying because it's like my experience of social anxiety, it got to points where like I could not control it at all, and it's like you wish you could, and it's so irrational. You wish you weren't like this, but you just are. Till this day, even though I've healed a lot from it and I've gotten better, I still get really anxious about phone calls. I don't know what it is about phone calls. I guess it's just like not being able to see that person on the other side. I get on a phone call, it'll be like I'm scheduling an appointment with my doctor, and then my heart feels like it's gonna fall out of my chest. I'm like, it's beating so fast. And I'm like so annoyed with myself because I'm like, literally, why am I anxious about this? This is just like a doctor. And like in my head, I know rationally it's not supposed to be something that's bringing me so much anxiety. Like, why am I in fight or flight response mode right now? Like, this is literally just a phone call. And that's what social anxiety is. It's something you cannot really control. And it took a lot of time for me to get past that point of like, feeling that on the daily, you know? So I just want to emphasize, if you're someone who struggles with social anxiety, please don't like beat yourself up about it if you still struggle with it, because it is really, really hard to heal from. But I do want to encourage you to do the smallest things to help, and those small things are small. I remember in high school, I would sometimes raise my hand if the teacher like was giving a question. I remember I would get like this insane adrenaline rush whenever I did that, because it just made me feel like I contributed. I felt like I was talking, even if it wasn't like something huge. Like, it gave me like a high for the day. I was like, oh my god, like remember that time in third period I raised my hand and I got the answer correct and the teacher said awesome? Like, that's the most greatest feeling in the world. Also, I really love to give people compliments because it forces you to sort of strike up that conversation with someone. Not even a conversation, it's just like a statement. Say, hey, like I really like your shirt. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, thank you. And it feels good, you know? Not only are you making that person feel good, but you're making yourself feel good. So it's a win-win situation. And then who knows? Maybe that person will say something back to you, and then dang, like you're having a conversation and maybe you're friends now. That's so awesome. So, you know, saying good morning to people on walks. And for me, like when I'm having conversations with people, I try to be as relatable as I can. I just try to like be brutally honest in a way, you know, like say what's on the top of my mind, and I try not to overthink things or give things a second thought, because then that's when I start to like really clam up. Another thing that sort of helped me get out of my shell was realizing that I was painting myself to be a victim. And I just want to clarify too, like if you are someone who struggles with getting bullied, or you know people are actively out to get you, especially in high school, in an environment like high school, you are the victim. Like I'm not saying you're not the victim, but in my case, nobody was like out to get me. You know, I just thought everyone was out to get me because no one was my friend. You know, nobody was like actively picking on me. Like I was okay, but I just felt like I had to point the finger at someone else. So I was going, you guys suck, you guys don't understand me, none of you want to be my friend, I hate all of you. But the funny thing is when you're pointing your finger at someone, you're pointing three fingers back at yourself. The three fingers. I was the one that hated myself. I was the one that didn't understand myself. I was the one that wasn't my friend. And I just want to emphasize, if you're not your friend, your own friend, you don't even like yourself, how do you expect others to be your friend? How do you expect others to like you? Because let me tell you, it's the most apparent thing when you don't like yourself. You project your insecurities onto other people. You self-sabotage. And I've just seen it so many times where like, especially in group settings where like one person just sort of like you know, crumbles and spreads drama, and it's just like, you do not want to be that person. That's pretty much all I got, you know, like pretty much the conclusion of the video. I feel like I've been talking forever. I don't know if there's a point to this video. I don't know if anyone has gotten anything out of this. If you're still watching, I assume it's because you're also a quiet person who understands. But I think my greatest hope for this video is that if you are a quiet person, my greatest hope is that you don't hate yourself for it. You have to have your own back. You have to give yourself grace and compassion, because if not you, then who else is gonna do it? I really wish I could go back in time and tell myself that. I wish I could have watched this video when I was in high school or in middle school. I would have saved myself from so much unnecessary suffering. I look back at those times and I just feel like I never really let myself be a kid. I never really let myself have a childhood because I was just so caught up in this spiral of self-hatred and shame. You really do not have to be ashamed of being quiet. I know society and your peers are gonna make you feel otherwise, and till this day I still get like misunderstood all the time. Like, people always just think I'm like stuck up or something because I'm quiet, and I can understand how that happens, but you know, that's their perception of me. They're projecting whatever internalized thoughts they have onto me, and so, you know, I don't have anyone's standards to live up to. I don't think it's like a matter of like, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Oh, what type of personality are you? I just think like, when it comes down to it, you have to love yourself. As cliche as it sounds, you have to love yourself. There's plenty of extroverts out here who hate themselves and make that apparent. And there's plenty of introverts who hate themselves and they make it apparent. The intent of this video isn't to promote isolation. I want to emphasize, like, I'm not trying to say having friends sucks or community sucks. It's the opposite. I fully acknowledge how important friendships are, and I wish I had those friendships in my life right now. I'm really hoping in the future I'm able to, but right now I'm content. You know, like, the most important thing is like, you gotta be okay either way. You gotta be okay with no friends. You gotta be okay with friends. Yeah, that's basically the video. I think I pretty much said all I've needed to say. If you guys have any thoughts, especially if you're someone who's still in high school or middle school, I would love to know how you are doing genuinely, because I understand you, you know? It's not gonna be easy, but let me tell you, high school ends eventually. High school ends, and you know, whether you go to college, university, it may be just as bad, but it's another chance for you. It's another chance for you to start over with new people, with new environments, and I think you don't have to put yourself inside a box, okay? Step outside of the box, okay? I promise. It is scary, but it is worth it. And I just really hope everyone watching this finds their people, you know? That's pretty much it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video. I know I haven't done a, like, sit-down talking video in a while, and it's because I just get really anxious whenever I do these types of videos, because I fear that I'm boring. I fear that I'm not funny, which is kind of ironic because I get anxiety about it, and this video is me talking about anxiety. So here we are, facing our fears together, guys. Let's do it. Let's face our fears together. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye. Oh, my legs hurt so bad.